Tonight, you might open your freezer and grab a pint of vanilla, and in this video, you're going to learn, where does the ice cream actually come from? The cold sugar hits your tongue. You won't think twice about it. But the real answer to where this dessert came from is far stranger than a supermarket freezer aisle. It starts thousands of years before refrigeration existed, before dairy farms, before sugar was even common. It starts with kings sending runners up mountains to bring back snow. Why would anyone do that? Your ancestors didn't crave ice cream. They craved cold. And cold, for most of human history, was a luxury only power could buy. Around 400 BCE, Persian nobility built structures called yakhchals. These were tall, dome-shaped towers made of clay, designed to trap winter ice and keep it frozen through the brutal desert summer. Food historian Jerry Quinzio, who has spent decades tracing the origins of frozen desserts, notes that these ice pits were some of the earliest evidence of humans engineering cold on purpose, not for survival, for pleasure. That's the first clue. This story was never about hunger. It was about desire. Centuries later, Alexander the Great reportedly had snow packed with honey and fruit juices carried down from the mountains for his soldiers and guests. Imagine that logistics problem. Runners moving in relays, racing against melting ice, just so a commander could taste something cold in the middle of a campaign. That's not nutrition, that's status. And status is where this gets interesting. By the time you reach the Roman Empire, the Emperor Nero was allegedly sending men into the Apennine Mountains to fetch snow, which servants would then mix with honey, fruit pulp, and wine. Historians debate how literal these accounts are, but the pattern holds across every early record. Cold, sweetened, flavored ice was reserved for the top of the social pyramid. So why did the poor never get to taste it? Because keeping something frozen for most of history required an entire supply chain. Ice had to be harvested in winter, insulated with straw or sawdust, stored underground, and transported before it melted. That's not a kitchen task. That's an empire-level operation, which means for thousands of years, only emperors, sultans, and nobility ever experienced the sensation you get from a $5 cone at a gas station. Now here's where the story bends. By the 13th and 14th centuries, trade routes connecting Asia, the Middle East, and Europe were carrying more than silk and spices. They were carrying techniques. Some popular accounts credit Marco Polo with bringing frozen dessert recipes back from China. Most serious historians now consider that claim exaggerated, possibly even invented centuries later to make the story more romantic. But something real was happening underneath the myth. Sugar, citrus, and dairy techniques were spreading along these same trade networks, and frozen sweetened treats were evolving independently in multiple regions at once. That's an important lesson about history itself. The neat story is usually a simplification. The messy, tangled truth is usually closer to what actually happened. By the 1500s, the picture sharpens. When Catherine de' Medici left Italy to marry into the French royal family, she is widely credited with bringing Italian confectioners and their frozen dessert techniques into the French court. Suddenly, sorbetto and early ice-based desserts were fashionable among European aristocracy, still exclusive, still a symbol of wealth, still nowhere near your freezer. So what changed? Two things: chemistry and ice. In the 1550s, someone in Italy discovered that mixing salt with ice dramatically lowers the temperature of the mixture. This is basic freezing point depression, something you learn in a chemistry class today. But at the time, it was closer to magic. Suddenly, you didn't need mountain snow at all. You could manufacture intense cold anywhere, using salt and ice you already had. This single discovery is arguably the true birth of ice cream as a technique, not just a luxury import. From there, Recipes spread through Italy, into France, and eventually into England, gradually shifting from icy fruit syrups towards something richer. Cream started replacing water. Eggs started appearing in some versions. The texture your tongue recognizes today, smooth, dense, slightly resistant, started to take shape. But it was still handmade, one small batch at a time, churned by servants for hours. Which brings you to the real turning point. Not a monarch, not a chef, a woman most people have never heard of. In 1843, an American woman named Nancy Johnson patented a hand-cranked ice cream freezer. It used a simple rotating paddle inside an ice and salt bath, allowing the mixture to freeze evenly while incorporating air. That mechanism, with only minor modifications, is essentially the same system used in ice cream machines today. This is the moment the dessert stopped being an aristocratic secret and started becoming a technology anyone could own. By the late 1800s, industrial refrigeration was advancing fast. Ice houses gave way to mechanical refrigeration. Dairies scaled up. And ice cream parlors began appearing in American cities, selling something that had been the exclusive pleasure of emperors just a few centuries earlier, now available for a few cents to anyone walking down the street. Here's the twist most people never think about. Ice cream didn't become popular because humans suddenly discovered a new food. It became popular because an ancient craving, one your brain already carried, finally became affordable enough to satisfy on demand. That craving isn't cultural, it's evolutionary. Fat and sugar, combined, are two of the most calorically dense signals your brain can detect. For nearly your entire evolutionary history, calories were not guaranteed. A body that felt intense reward from finding fat and sugar together was a body more likely to survive a famine. Neuroscientist Nicole Avena, who has spent years studying how sugar interacts with the brain's reward circuitry, has shown that sugar consumption triggers dopamine release in pathways strikingly similar to those activated by other highly reinforcing substances. Your brain doesn't know it's the year 2026. Your brain still reacts as if that spoonful of cold cream and sugar might be the last dense calorie source you find for weeks. That's why one bite rarely feels like enough. There's a deeper layer too. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that cooking itself was one of the key turning points in human evolution, unlocking more digestible calories and reshaping human brains and bodies over hundreds of thousands of years. Sweetness, fat, and rich texture became signals your ancestors' brains learned to chase relentlessly, because chasing them successfully once meant the difference between surviving a lean season and not. Ice cream, in other words, isn't tricking your brain. It's speaking a language your brain has understood since long before agriculture, long before writing, long before anyone thought to freeze a bowl of cream. So why does it still feel so good so specifically on a hot day or after a hard week? Because you're not just tasting sugar and fat. You're tasting an ancient reward signal, one that took thousands of years of human ingenuity. From Persian ice towers to Roman mountain runners to French confectioners to a hand-cranked machine in 1843 just to make available on command. Every emperor who once paid a fortune for a bowl of honeyed snow was chasing the exact same neurological reward you get from a $2 cone. The difference isn't the craving. The craving is ancient and unchanged. The difference is access. You didn't inherit a love of ice cream. You inherited a brain built by scarcity, one that still lights up for fat and sugar exactly the way it did when finding them meant survival. Tonight, when you open your freezer and grab that pint, you're not just satisfying a craving. You're completing a chain that stretches back through hand-cranked machines. French royal courts, salt and ice chemistry, Roman snow runners, and Persian desert towers built to trap winter itself. The cold sugar hits your tongue, and for a moment, without knowing it, you're tasting exactly what emperors once paid fortunes to feel.